Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name's Rainy, and today we are going to finally talk about the last installment of the Betsy section of the Deep Valley series, Betsy's Wedding. Now, this review that I'm going to do for you is probably going to uh, contain a lot of spoilers. So I tried to think of how I could talk about this book without giving a lot of spoilers, and I can't do it. First of all, I found it very satisfying because we've been having this slow burn romance of Betsy and Joe for the entirety of this read along that we've been doing. So, obviously, in Betsy and Joe, Betsy and Joe, Betsy's Wedding, this is the first spoiler. She marries Joe. So, we start off where the last book left off, which is kind of unusual for the past Betsy Tacy books. They usually, up until I believe the last book, Betsy's Great World, they had been basically yearly through Betsy's life. And then the last one, we skipped 4 years in Betsy's life. And so I kind of expected that we would start off back in Deep Valley, and they would be, getting already engaged and getting ready to get married. But no, we found her just getting off the boat from Europe, where the last one had left off. And Joe was there to meet her, and, of course, the love started right away, right from where we would hope that it would. And they were just very happy to be back together, and always forgiven that kind of tiny little summing up that so many books don't have anymore. And it was kind of nice and refreshing. They took so many years to get together and to get to this point that all of a sudden Joe doesn't want to wait anymore to actually marry Betsy. So he kind of coerces Betsy into having a very quick engagement. And that was kind of my first issue with this book. For a book entitled Betsy's Wedding, I would have expected the majority of the book to be about Betsy's wedding and the preparations for that, and figuring that, bad things would happen while she's trying to, get there, and maybe cold feet and blah, blah, blah. That's not what happens in this. Um, Within the first few chapters of this book, Betsy and Joe are married, and they don't really go into a lot of detail about the wedding. That's great and all. I mean, I don't really see the need for long engagements. I mean, anymore, people have years long engagements, and that's kind of, in my opinion, I guess maybe because of my age, if I was going to get engaged to somebody, I'd probably want to be married within 6 months. I don't know. But that's just my own personal belief. So it was kind of refreshing in a way to see that they didn't put a lot of value on the actual wedding. But at the same time, the girliness in me wanted more preparation for Betsy and wanted her to have that big wedding, because I kind of felt like that's really what she would have wanted. I was a little bit mad at Joe for kind of convincing Betsy to get married within a month. And I was kind of hoping that some of the challenges that they faced, and Mr. Ray was very, he was the reason in this scenario, and he was going to make Joe wait. And I will say, to Joe's credit, he didn't want to wait, and he met all of the requirements that Mr. Ray put on him in order to be able to get married. And he did it really rather quickly, probably quicker than is realistic. But yeah, so within the first few chapters, we have already had Betsy's wedding. So I feel like this book was mistitled. I feel like this would have been better titled and less jarring, maybe, to call it Betsy's marriage, Betsy and Joe's first year, or even something regarding Tib, because I felt like the majority of this book focused more on Tib than it did on Betsy and Joe. But I did enjoy watching Betsy and Joe's first year. I felt like this, beyond all of the other Betsy books, really showed Betsy maturing into a real dignified woman of her correct age. I really liked to see how she struggled with her newfound domestic responsibilities because, her job in that era was to be a housewife and to look after Joe and cook for him and clean for him. She manages her household, and it's really great to see her learn the things that she's expected to do, and like she takes it seriously. Like it is her job. She does not want to spend too much money, and Joe is actually the one that's like, "Hey, we can afford to spend a little bit of money on some nice things and some things for you." Like she becomes really surprisingly unselfish in this, and I really enjoyed seeing that. On the other side of things, Betsy and Tacy are still kind of meddling in people's lives, especially their friend Tib. Um, Tacy and Betsy are both married in this. Tacy has a young child at the beginning of this, and they feel really sorry for Tib. And because Tib is unmarried, but she has a job, she's pretty much loving life. she's she's like a single girl about town. But Betsy and Tacy believe that Tib would be better off married. And I get that because in that era, that was just what women did. And it was probably very strange to see Tib in a single girl's role and not just settling down and settling for a man. So Tacy and Betsy take it upon themselves to set her up with some different gentlemen. Some gentlemen. These men are awful. I don't know what possessed them. The first man that they set her up with, he's not horrible, but he's not right for Tib. And other than the fact that he's rich, he really has nothing in common with Tib other than I think he likes to dance. That's pretty much the only thing they have in common. Oh, and he has a car, which is something that Tib aspires for, is to have her own car. Um, which is funny because I don't think Betsy and Tacy understand that either. Like there's a scene where Tib calls Betsy on the phone, and when she's seeing this millionaire, and she says she has something exciting news and a surprise for Betsy, and Betsy's thinking that this guy proposed to her, and Tib is just all excited because this guy has a car and he's going to let her drive it. And I thought that was hilarious. The second guy that they set her up with, he is a horrible, horrible, horrible person. And he is selfish. He is egotistical. He won't let Tib do anything. He is emotionally abusive, and at one point could almost be called a stalker. And I was actually really surprised about that, that they put that in there, because that seemed like a really like a scary thing. But I'm glad they did, and that's one of the things that I really love about this series, is there have been just instances throughout the entire series that are really hard topics that are talked about, but they're talked about in a way that is kind of, I wouldn't say that they're glossed over, they're not, but they're not focused on in a huge way, and they're dealt with in a realistic fashion. And I felt like that they did that with this one pretty well, I would say. And it didn't like get like too scary or anything like that. I mean, this is a nice book. um, but they did deal with that hard topic, and I thought they dealt with it well, and it was very comforting to see Betsy and Joe come to Tib's aid, and to realize that this guy, what was his name, Rocky, was not the one for her. And they were willing to allow that he might be if she really liked him. But, and they weren't going to interfere. But once they saw what he was doing to her, then they supported her in her decisions and told her that she was making the right choice. And I really appreciated that. I really enjoyed Tib's part of the story more than I enjoyed Betsy and Joe's part of the story. And maybe that's because I can relate to Tib more in this instance. And there was actually one section of the book that really got me. And this will probably, I mean, this whole video has been a spoiler, so you shouldn't be watching if you if you want to avoid spoilers at this point. But yeah, I thought I would read it to you because this really hit home for me, because I have had this experience. And I have to say, before I read this, that this talks about the Violent Study Club, which is not as violent as the name would suggest. So don't be alarmed if you haven't read this yet. She did not return to the Violent Study Club, although that was its merry self again. Betsy knew it made Tib's heart ache to go to the places or do the things she associated with Rocky. She loved to go out to the Kerrs and plays with the babies, and she rejoiced wholeheartedly in the Willards' good fortune. And I liked that paragraph because it showed, she might not want to do things that would remind her of Rocky. And I took a break from a thing that I really liked to do for a very long time after a breakup, because that thing reminded me of my relationship. And yeah, I really appreciated that. And that also it said that she would enjoy the things with her friends that she didn't have, and she wasn't jealous, and she enjoyed the babies, and she enjoyed her friends Betsy and Joe, and she didn't let that stop her from enjoying those things just because she was sad. That just proves too that Tib was always very secure in herself, and very secure in whatever part of life she found herself. That's really all I have to say about Betsy's wedding, or Betsy's marriage, as I would like to refer to it. I hope that you have enjoyed our read along so far. It is not over, and we're going to continue on with the last 3 books in the Deep Valley series, but they do not focus on Betsy. This was bittersweet. I liked to see this ending, but it also felt very open-ended to me. The war is really ramping up for the U.S. at the end of this, and pretty much all the boys sign up. I want to know that Joe's going to be okay, and I'm hoping that there's some mention of Betsy and Joe and all that in the next 3 books. But so it has been a great ride with Betsy and Tacy and Tib, and I've really enjoyed this series. And I honestly do think that this series is going to be kind of a comfort read series for me from now on. All right, friends, I hope you enjoyed my little review. It was a little bit rambly, but that's how my videos are going to be in the next little bit. And I will talk to you soon. Bye, friends.